What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is our first video of our camera basic series Taylor and I have started to help answer a lot of the questions that we're getting on Instagram and Facebook regarding camera settings when we take specific pictures, how we edit our pictures, so on and so forth. So this first video is going to cover the three most important settings you need to focus on when taking pictures, and that is your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. Your shutter speed, to keep it short and sweet, is essentially how fast your camera is taking a picture. The faster the shutter speed, the less light that is able to get into the camera while the camera is taking the picture, and the darker your photo is going to be. The slower the shutter speed, the more light that is able to get into the camera and the brighter your picture is going to be. This is usually the first thing you want to check if your lighting doesn't quite look right when taking a picture. For example, if you're taking pictures of like a sporting event or your subject is moving very, very quick, you'll want a fast shutter speed. That way your picture is not blurry, it is very sharp. Keep in mind that also makes your picture darker. So shutter speed is essentially how fast your camera is taking a picture. The second setting you're going to want to focus on when taking pictures is your aperture. Now this affects two things. One, it affects your light. The bigger the aperture, like a 1.8 or a 2.8, the more light that's brought into the camera, the brighter your photo is going to be. The smaller the aperture, like an f/22, the less light that is allowed into the camera and the darker your photo is going to be. It also affects your depth of field. So the bigger the aperture, like a 1.8, the more in focus it's going to be, and you're going to have the blurry background, the bokeh behind the subject. For a smaller aperture, like an f/22, you're not going to have any blurriness in the picture. The entire frame of the photo is going to be in focus, but your photo is also going to be darker. So your aperture affects your light and your depth of field, and it is usually the second thing you want to check when getting your settings right for your picture. And last but not least, the third setting you're going to want to look at when taking a picture is your ISO. ISO is essentially fake light that the camera adds to the picture to brighten it up. This is usually the last thing you want to check when getting your settings right for a picture. It's usually the first thing that new photographers go to and start changing to get their settings right, but in reality, it's the last thing you want to check. ISO really only needs to be touched if you're shooting in low light situations or at night, or if your settings are just extremely dark. For the most part, on my pictures on my Instagram and on Taylor's Instagram, the ISO is at 100. We don't ever touch it. If we do mess with the ISO, it's because it's extremely dark outside, it's a low light situation, and we'll bump it up. For example, if you're taking like night photography outside, not a lot of street lights, your ISO is going to want to be around 3200 to 4000. Keep in mind, the more you bump your ISO up, the more noise you're going to get. This can be corrected a little bit in editing. However, it will add noise and it will affect the clarity of your photo. So your ISO is the last thing you want to touch when getting your settings right. And there you have it. This was short and sweet. So the three settings you want to focus on: your shutter speed, how fast the camera is taking a picture; your aperture, which is your depth of field in the picture; and your ISO, which is fake light added by the camera to your picture. So hopefully this gave you a very brief overview of what each thing is, what it does, how it affects pictures. If you want a more in-depth, detailed video about each setting, please let me know and I'll post one. But I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for our next video.